Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
What's happening, everybody? It's the GSMC Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. Host 1, Ethan. Host 2, Brice. Or host 1, Brice. Host 1, Ethan. This does matter. It's interchangeable. It can switch sides. It can play offense and defense. Two-dimensional players. The Michael and the Pippen. the LeBron and the Wade. Or the LeBron and the Kyrie. Well, Kyrie didn't play any defense, so.
Oh man!
Actually, Kyrie is an underrated defender from the defensive standpoint. He's not the best. He's just kind of.
Oh yeah.
He just steals the ball sometimes, but he's not guarding you one on one. Like he's not on ball guy, but he'll steal in the passing lanes. Like,
but he tries. That's all you hope for. He tries. Like Steph, he tries.
Yeah, like Steph is a good off ball defender, or a serviceable. I don't like to use the word good too much. He's serviceable.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is about football, not basketball. I don't know why I do this so much. I guess because I think about basketball a lot when it's supposed to be the playoffs and all that. So shed a few tears for the NBA right now. But yeah, man, we have some things to talk about. The schedule was released last week. We didn't get to talk about it too much. Because, our show happens only on Tuesdays. But it's here now. So, Brice, the schedule. How did you feel? Well, for one, how did you feel about all these videos and creative ways they started to release the schedule?
I mean, listen, man, since it's quarantine, you got to be creative. And obviously, think about it. You're on these fan accounts and on the website, you want to, you always want to make it, you don't want to make it seem so generic. Okay, guys, here's the schedule. Look at it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, where's the excitement? So if you put a little hype in there, and then you add a little good graphic detail, and then you get some artists, and boom, 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 you have this creative opening to your schedule release. Like, obviously, since I am a Falcon fan, I saw our schedule release video. Obviously, going with our new theme, with our new uniforms, that were just this 3,000 team with all this technology and everything. So, obviously, I think it's pretty cool. Might as well. Those interns are getting paid for this.
Shoot, I don't think interns made those videos, man. Yeah, a lot of shout out to the NFL creative teams. They did a good job here. I enjoyed it. The Panthers one is really, really dope. They just have this guy basically in self-quarantine. He's playing Madden. He's playing Animal Cross. Who did have, I think it was, somebody had a full-on Animal Crossing themed one. I can't remember who it was, but it was crazy. But nah, man, they had everything that's been basically super popular within the quarantine culture. So Switches, gaming, just cooking random stuff. You kind of go outside for a little bit around your neighborhood, then come back, take a nap. It was just like he just bored doing nothing. But they made it creative, though. It was cool. Do you think this is the future of how schedules will be released now? Because I think this will be a much, much more entertaining thing as far as capitalizing on social media hype about schedules and all this. I think that was a real good way of showcasing the schedule.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, you got to think about, obviously, a lot of these schedules were leaked before the actual official time, but everything gets leaked. And what doesn't get leaked nowadays?
Right. I mean, if you ever watch a draft of any league, the versions Woj is coming out there and just throwing everything out there.
Exactly. So, because if you have the information, you might as well get it out there because we're going to know within 5 minutes. So, yeah, I think, this creativeness is obviously just going with the wave, like you said, with social media and how things have, change. Obviously, this quarantine culture, obviously a lot of teams try to adapt to things that are popular in the video. And honestly, you can just see the creativity that they have in making it. It makes you wonder how long it took them, because obviously it makes you first wonder how long did they have to schedule. Because some of these videos I don't think you made in like 30 minutes.
No, of course not. They've
so they
known
must have had the schedule for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they kind of have to, I feel like, in order to
They just have to keep it under wraps.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I definitely think this is probably going to be the case moving forward, probably for every schedule release day, probably before the official schedule is released, they'll have teams dropping these type of, basically everything has a hype video. So you can call this a schedule release hype video.
Yeah.
That's what every team's going to do now. So might as well hype everything up. Get your fans excited for who you're playing, when you're playing, if you got prime time, et cetera, all of it. Because, watching it on TV and watching it through your team's website or team social media right now is much more hyping. I want to see it through there because that's my team, and the way they present it to me is much more intriguing than just the typical, hey guys, welcome in, schedule release. So, yeah.
I definitely feel you on that. So I've been looking at some of the schedules right now and seeing who have some of the weaker schedules, because that can kind of prove, like, if there's like a team that was on the bubble last year, for example, and their schedule is much, much easier on paper than it was last year, then you can start predicting like maybe who could be like a playoff sleeper that no one's really checking out for because their schedule is favorable more than it was last year. So apparently Baltimore has the softest schedule or strength of schedule in the league. Mm-hmm. They only have one occurrence of a back-to-back road contest. They opened the season at home versus the Browns with a new coaching staff and finished with manageable home dates against the Jaguars and the Giants before visiting the Bengals in Week 17.
Wow, that's an easy end.
Yeah, they do play Kansas City in Week 3 at home, and they play against the Titans after the last season's super or playoff loss. They do play them, and their bye lands in Week 8. So it's a good little middle of the season bye, like legit cut in the middle. Mm-hmm. Then Tampa Bay. So the NFC South is going to be a bloodbath, but at the same time, Tampa Bay has the rougher out of the division showdown. So they play the Packers, the Rams, the Chiefs, the Vikings, and they all take place at home, apparently. So they don't get to go on the West Coast essentially for most of their schedule. And they don't leave home between Week 11 and Week 14, and they're basically put with a bunch of primetime games. And they'll be playing 5 night tilts between Week 5 and Week 11. But the schedule makers are giving Tom Brady a month to heat up before putting them all under the spotlight. So first few weeks are going to be kind of tame, and then they're going to get everything off to the races, really. The Bears have a pretty light schedule. They're set up solid pretty much to go against the Lions, the Giants, and then the Falcons. Rest in peace for you. And and instead of visiting Green Bay, they get to play Green Bay at Soldier Field. So, there's some interesting schedule stuff going on. Cleveland has a pretty favorable schedule comparative to the rest of the league. So we may see some Cleveland in there if Baker Mayfield can remember how to play football, or figure out how to play NFL football, should I say. Let me not be disrespectful. He knows how to play football. He's just, the NFL is a different game, and he has not been able to adjust to it yet. And some of that's his fault. Some of that, is out of his control and all that. So this is not going to be an anti-Browns podcast today. Even if I still have a lot of feelings against how Odell was treated for fantasy. there was a lot of money on the line, Brice, and I just didn't get to see it.
I felt that, man.
Listen, real quick, we have like 2 months. Have you forgotten all about the XFL?
I have not.
Like it just came across my mind just now. I was like, wow, I was playing fantasy for XFL like maybe a month and a half ago at the most, and now it's just gone.
Yeah, man.
It's like a hole is missing inside of me because it was really good. Like, we just didn't know how good we had it. Imagine if we didn't have the XFL and just football was just up in the air entirely. Like, if we just didn't have that little stretch of football that was kind of cool to watch, but it was not the best product we could have asked for. Yeah, man. That's a shout out to the XFL. Hopefully it can come back again. But,
yeah, man. Hopefully.
We're going to take another break here, right? And then we're going to talk about Jim Harbaugh. He has some interesting ideas and proposes some rules to make change in college football according to how players are drafted. That is coming up.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Okay, Brice. So Jim Harbaugh, one of the more outspoken guys in the college football coaching ranks about, giving players more, more agency over their careers and their lives, of their current young lives. He's one of those who's been very, very much approving of name, image, and likeness, monetization, and making money off of their, off of their name and off of their play on the field. And recently, in an open letter on Thursday, he outlined 3 proposals which he believes would reshape the future of college football players. So I'm going to read one after the other, or I'll read one and then hear what you have to say about it, and then we'll just keep doing that for each of the 3. So, Rule 1, or Proposal 1. The individual could choose to declare for the professional draft after any season he chooses. If he's drafted within the first 224 picks of the draft or chooses to sign a free agent contract, he would forego remaining college eligibility. However, if the individual is not drafted within the first 224 picks of the NFL draft, he would be able to return to college football if he chooses without penalty, provided he remains in academic compliance and does not receive payment from an agent.
I mean, I agree with this. I agree with this move. I mean, because, you know, you have those players who come out of school maybe a year early just trying to, I guess, to see, because they've been told, hey, man, you're going to go in the 4th, 3rd round, and they don't get drafted until the 7th, or they don't get drafted at all, and they're just like, whoa, what happened? So, you know, it gives them the ability to say, oh, I don't like where I'm at. I don't like my standing. Let me go back to school and try to improve my stock for another year. I think it's just like, I think that should be the rule for any sport, because to sit here and say, hey, if you go out too early, it's over for you. You can't come back and improve it. It's kind of sometimes a little bit unfair. And you never know. Maybe if he goes back to whatever school, he can start again and boom, improve his stock. And, you know, then enter the draft the next year, and then hopefully, you know, get a little higher. You know, for the players that we say sometimes come out too early, you know, it helps them have the ability to kind of have the ability to always know if it doesn't work out, I can go back. Because I think that's why the NBA, when they did it with their players, being able to, like, if you don't, you can drop out before the draft, you could drop out after the draft if you want, and come back to school, because why not give themselves the platform to still be able to play the game they love? You still get your scholarship probably, and and everything works.
Yeah, when I first saw the proposals, I thought about that, and I thought about how baseball has worked, where you could go into the draft after really at any point after high school, right? So you can go straight into the draft after high school if you want, and go play AA or AAA if you're that nice. But in college, you don't have to go all 4 years. Of course, you can leave, I believe, after your second year or something like that. You have
to have at least 3 years of playing. But, like, obviously you get redshirted, that counts as a year.
Yeah. So, like, but for baseball, it's, if you say you get drafted but you don't really enjoy, you can go back to school. You don't have to.
Oh yeah. Wasn't it like a rule, like you could leave after like high school or something, but if you go to college, you have to commit for a certain amount of years?
Yeah. So you have to play for a certain amount of years, and then if you don't like your draft position or you're not feeling this, you can, or say you don't get drafted, of course, you can go back to school. You don't lose your college eligibility, which I thought was always interesting. But the first thing that I thought about with this is that, because I was in a text thread with some friends when I sent them this article that I was reading about it, was this proposal is interesting, because I'm not really looking at this, because a lot of people would think, oh, this is bad. What 18-year-old, like, a lot of people were saying, you're going to put an 18-year-old on Aaron Donald. And I'm saying, no, that's not what this is probably about. This is about guys who are probably already NFL bound by their second year of playing on the field, and they don't have to waste a third year essentially playing for free. Right? Mm-hmm. So that's my train of thought is, like, the Trevor Lawrence's, like, this isn't about the people who should probably stay in school for a bit longer. They'll get more playing time that way, because you're not going to get a whole bunch of playing time if you just go straight to the NFL and you're only 19, 20 years old, right? And you're just not going to – you would get more development, like, in a collegiate atmosphere where they're going to play you the maximum amount of time, rather than just sitting in somebody's training camp, or not training camp, but, you know, somebody's reserves, and you're not even doing scout team and stuff like that.
And it also helps because, you know, obviously since football is a physical sport, it gives you time to really develop the body to be able to play at the next level.
But I mean, for certain positions, so like in my head, I think quarterback, wide receiver, and at rare cases running back could do this. If they have a stellar, complete stellar rock star, superstar first 2 years, true freshman, and then their sophomore season was really good as well. And they want to bypass their third year, and they should be able to go into the draft. You can't tell me Trevor Lawrence wouldn't be drafted 2 weeks ago. And he's not one of the, if not, he would be a better prospect. He'd probably go before Tua.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be you could argue that he might go before Burrow. So that's where I'm seeing something like this at is that could be useful. This is for the top echelon. The same thing with basketball going on right now. A lot of basketball superstar high school recruit types are just deciding to say, no, I don't want to go to college. I'm going to go sign a G League contract, make money while I learn about the NBA structure in the G League, and bypass that year. I don't need to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's not something that I think every recruit coming out of high school is going to do, because that's just not. I just don't see that happening. You have to be the top of the top. And I think this is the same thing. Not everybody's going to, if this rule came in place or this proposal was approved, not everybody's going to come out in their first year or at all, really. And let's not forget that it's not even if somebody does come out early, it's very unlikely that someone's going to take a 20-year-old in the first 150 picks in the draft. He'll probably go 5th round or something like that and be a project, because he's probably more raw than defined coming out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll work with him. They'll make him stronger, I'm sure, and they'll figure it out. But if your talent really is that crazy, that elite, you should be able to bypass. Because you're just wasting your own, you're wasting the maximum amount of money you could potentially be making. You couldn't tell me after the first season of Jameis and then second season Jameis, he wasn't going to be the first overall pick anyway. Third season arguably made it worse, and he still was the first overall pick.
Yeah, I get that.
So, yeah, that's how I felt about the first one. The second one, individuals leaving college early prior to graduation who signs an NFL contract will be entitled to complete his degree while in the NFL or return to the institution that he left to continue his college career as a student once his pro career was completed. Now, when I first read this, I was like, okay, this is the mama rule, right? Everybody's mom wants them to go to school and get a degree because the degree, even after the game, will still be with you no matter what happens. And I thought it was interesting, and let's be real. A lot of student athletes, their education track and the classes they take are pretty much tailor made to be foolproof. They're not, unless you're trying to go into medical school or get a PhD. 9 times out of 10, these athletes are taking classes that are going to, one, help them in their pursuits of being athletes. So people go into nutrition or physical training, things like that. And the classes are not too extensive, right? They don't challenge you to the point to where you're up all nights of the day trying to study for a chemistry test, right? That's just not, that's not really happening with a lot of these student athletes anyway, especially NFL guys who have to be in there for 3 years. They're definitely not going to make things tough. If you are athletically, or if you're academically ineligible in Division I, you did something wrong. How many times, the last time I heard somebody who was academically ineligible was the dude on Syracuse, a few years, what was his name? I feel like it began with an M. I just can't remember. But he ended up going to the Celtics for a little while, and then he kind of got bounced out the league. But I'll look it up later. But really, though, what I think this is for are the guys who may get in the league, right? They may go, and then they kind of get fluttered out by year 4. Because, the league average is very low as far as how long people play in the league. So if you get bounced out the league and essentially you're done, you might as well go back to school, right?
You have nothing else better to do. Get your degree, get you still a job, boom.
Right.
You can have a successful life.
So I think it's a pretty interesting rule. I don't know how practical it is, though.
The only school I think that would even make their kids stay up all night is like the top institutions like Stanford. Because, if you go there, Stanford. But that's why they only recruit certain people who go there, too. So it makes sense.
Yeah. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Obviously, because, you said, obviously Division I isn't, the most difficult, but, obviously if you think about some of the top academic schools in Division I, like Stanford or, a Georgia Tech or something like that, obviously those schools are probably a little bit harder. But that's why, obviously, with student athletes, they do require them to be a little bit higher in GPA because, we can't bring down our academics because we need you to play for us. So that's why sometimes they say that programs like that, it's limited in what they can recruit because, they're a pretty high academic institution. Right. And so you can't necessarily just bring anybody in there unless they have all the scores and the GPA to get into the school.
Right. Let's take a break real quick and we'll continue.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Okay, so we were just doing the two proposals that Jim Harbaugh, I always want to call him John, but it's Jim Harbaugh. He had 3 proposals. We just did the first 2. So the third one was A broadening of the rules to permit a student athlete and his family to consult with and seek advice on or before signing a professional contract from lawyers and agents, so long as the student athlete does not receive compensation.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, everything he said has made sense. Obviously the biggest thing is, how the NCAA are ruled ineligible when you get compensation. So it makes sense of everything he's saying, especially with this last rule too. Compensation is given, kind of can't come back because that kind of goes against our rules. So it definitely makes sense to me what he's saying, what he's trying to do, and why he's saying this. To give opportunities for players to come back, but at the same time still abiding by NCAA rules. I mean, I'm assuming for the most part with some of this, especially this last rule, that you pretty much agree to, Ethan. Is that safe to say? I know it may be something you may not be.
I just think they're interested, or the proposals are interesting. I'm just more so. I know they're not perfect. They're very flawed in some aspects, and I want to see where it could go. But I know this is more of just, there's nothing else really going on. So what else can you think about what's going on besides name, image, and likeness anyway?
Exactly. This is like a rough draft.
Not even a rough draft. I just don't it's technically it's a proposal, but I don't think anything will come out of it at all, especially since the fact that you can't even get group licensing together to get to a NCAA video game, something that would be beneficial for everybody involved. It's just you're not going to get this from the NCAA. They already have a hard time dealing with college basketball, like one and dones. Like, you're not going to let these dudes just walk out of here. This is the cash cow. This is the money maker. So, I don't know. I do think it's an interesting thought exercise on just how much freedom is true agency to college players and stuff like that. But what we were going to talk about this segment for real is Mr. Newton, Cam. He's back again in the talking cycle because he has recently, from his camp at least, has said that he's open to going in a backup role this season and, essentially being a bench quarterback or a second string guy for a franchise. And I don't think I ever saw this one coming. I really thought Cam was just going to say, I'm either going to start or I'm not going to play. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, remember, initially there were reports saying that he said he was only going to start. And then after that, I think they probably talked to him like, hey, Cam, if you really want to get on a roster this year, you got to be okay with being a backup. So, to me, I can understand it for a long-term perspective. If a team does pick him up to be a backup, obviously, again, you never know what happens in the NFL. Injuries happen. Cam might be thrust into starting action. He can redeem his career. Then we have another story, like a Ryan Tannehill story or something. But at the same time, the question is also with bringing in Cam, since Cam is a former MVP, and Cam does still have, I think he's a very talented player still at this point in his career. Wherever you bring him in at, how good is the starter ahead of him? Like, obviously, when Jameis signed with Drew, well, we know Drew is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Of course, unless something happens to Drew, Jameis ain't touching that field. But if he went to, like, a team like a Jacksonville, or if he did go to a team like a Washington, well, their quarterback in front of them is not proven, which is obviously going to make fans and everybody be like, okay, get Cam on the field, he's the better guy. And then that's going to create pressure on the organization, the head coach, and everything. And I think that's one other reason why maybe some teams haven't necessarily moved on Cam yet, because they know that's what's going to come with Cam. Because it's not like Cam's a scrub trying to be in the league. He's a guy who was a starter his whole career, literally. And now, because of injuries and other things, he was let go by his team that drafted him. Now he's a free agent. I mean, some people may say there's some stuff that comes with Cam. He doesn't do anything bad to me. So to me, I don't see that as an issue in my opinion. But obviously that's going to be probably the thing that makes teams hesitant to break him in as a backup as well. But you never know. If an injury, like I said, happens, that's when you might see people really going out of the way to try to get Cam in the doors of one of these teams.
Well, I guess it's more of a ideology. What do you think? I feel like, where do you think he would have the best chance of sliding in, infiltrating into a starting position at the backup role? And the first place you have to think about now is potentially Pittsburgh, right? Like, he won't start immediately because they're still trying to get Big Ben going. They didn't draft a quarterback in the draft, so they still have vacancies. We're not very sure about Mason Rudolph as a player, let alone whatever else stuff is going on with him. So you would think that the Steelers would be an interesting place for him to land because, say, Big Ben retires next season or he goes down again. You already have somebody who is proven enough to be a starter in this league. And at his best days, he's one of the best starters in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
well, if he signed with Pitt, it would be very telling on how long he gets signed to. If it's a 1-year deal, I would feel like, okay, if Ben retired and you signed for a 1-year deal, yeah, you could re-sign him, but it's just kind of like, Cam may take that year and be like, okay, let me look at my other options first, unless he was guaranteed the starting job. If Cam signed like a 2-year deal, then it's like, okay, if Ben did do that, well, yeah, I would think unless they cut him, Cam probably would be the guy. But yeah, so, yeah.
Well, it depends because you got to look at it like this from an owner's perspective. If your quarterback situation is that dire to where Cam Newton comes in and say you're still not going, it's not going well, like because you didn't integrate a system proving that we wanted to keep Cam, you're probably only going to give him a 1-year contract. And then after that, it's going to be a case of, am I in a position to draft a quarterback for the future, or do I have to try and pay Cam more money? And I think a lot of teams are in that position. Like, say, the Bears. The Bears have a storm of options of what could possibly happen. Of course, they brought in Nick Foles via trade to give quarterback competition, quote unquote, to Trubisky. This is just the replacement for Trubisky in my eyes. This is it. That was the writing on the wall. And I don't think Trubisky will start unless something drastically bad happens in Chicago. So if Trubisky doesn't start, Nick Foles is a bust. 9 times out of 10, Chicago is not going to be the best place in the draft where they need to get a quarterback because everybody else in their division, so you have Green Bay, who's still probably the best in their division. The Lions had so many injuries, but they can steal a game or two to where it can be a little bit challenging. Then you have the Bears, right? And then, of course, you have Minnesota, who's already a pretty solid team that maybe already gotten better. So their division is pretty tough. So I think that the Bears are in the running for the next quarterback of the future conversation as well. And maybe Jacksonville if the things with Minshew doesn't work out. So there's places to where quarterbacks are needed maybe in the future, but as of this year, it's just too much uncertainty. You already have the coronavirus thing. They're just not – no one wants to fumble the bag of getting another potential generational quarterback getting drafted at the next year, right? I think a lot of people are mentally prepared for if this season sucks, we are not going to jeopardize the draft position by putting in somebody who may win us some games, but at the end is not going to be the guy we want to keep long term. So I think that's the reality of the situation for Cam Newton right now.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. Let me throw this out here to you. What if since this is a make or break year for Baker Mayfield, what if Cleveland signed Cam to be the backup?
That'd be really interesting as far as entertainment value because the first time you'll see Baker Mayfield just have a horrible game, the Cam rumblings will just start coming. And it wouldn't, and then you have Odell and Jarvis. I just have a hard time with them just saying, we wouldn't mind Cam, not coming in. We play with him in practice. I could see, Cam throws about as good as anybody in this league. Like, I love to catch some passes from Cam Newton. I can see that real quick. Just starting to really, really come about. But let's take a break and we'll get into this Brady and McDaniels nonsense.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Okay, Brice, you were just recently telling me about some Tom Brady stuff coming out about his time at the Patriots and why things may have went sour near the back end of all of this.
Yes. So obviously, Brady left the Patriots this offseason. Now he's in Tampa Bay. Obviously, Brady came out in an interview saying that he knew before this past year started, this was probably going to be his last year. So obviously, people have been trying to trace reasons, find reasons, dig up reasons why this decision came about. Obviously, it's been very publicized about his relationship with Bill Belichick and how they didn't see eye to eye and how, Bill Belichick found his successor, wanted to replace Brady. Brady was unhappy about that. Kraft stepped in and just this whole triangle happened. So obviously, while uncovering more things, according to NFL columnist Gary Myers, they said that one of the other reasons why he left New England was because of his relationship with Josh McDaniels. Tom was basically had been basically worn out by Josh McDaniels in the last few years. Obviously, it's kind of weird because what you heard on TV, what you heard from people was like, oh, him and Josh McDaniels are always on the same page. They're great together. They love each other because they always know what to call for Brady. And then you hear this and you're just kind of like, wait. So what's the relationship not good? And basically, they've said at times Brady wanted to get more input into game plans. So I'm guessing McDaniels didn't always let Brady have input into the game plans. And basically obviously, we remember, I don't know if you remember this even, back in 2017, the argument they had on the sidelines, kind of like that small little disagreement, nothing too big, but a small little disagreement. And, basically, with that being known, you're saying that he had a deteriorating relationship with Bill Belichick. He had a deteriorating relationship with Josh McDaniels. I mean, I can see why he knew before this season he was leaving, because it was just like there were too many iffy relationships that were not improving and they weren't going to improve, and then this feeling that they kind of want to move on from me because they don't want me here. So all of that might help, obviously understand why Brady made the decision that he made by going to Tampa. Because obviously, if he's having issues with the coordinator and the head coach and et cetera, not having enough weapons, it just feels, it feels like some people feel like this is some conspiracy theorists are going to say this was an inside job. They did this to make Brady leave and et cetera, et cetera. But, obviously, like I said, this situation is very, very fluid. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you even hear even more stories over the next couple of weeks, maybe next couple of months about why Brady left and if there were any other relationships that maybe turned him off and make him particularly the happiest. So it really just depends on, how people view it. Now, obviously, some people feel like at this rate, he'd been signed with Tampa, so there's really no point to stay on this topic, and that honestly we need to just appreciate what Brady did for New England and call it a day instead of always trying to break out potentially new dirt to make it seem like, okay, this was another sour relationship he had, and this was another sour relationship he had, and et cetera, et cetera. So to me, I feel like you're getting to that point where it's just like, all right, we're getting a little bit closer to the season. We have Corona going on. I mean, after a while, these stories are just going to be like, it just seems like you're leaking something to leak something now, or you're saying something just to say something now. Because now that relationship, I think both sides want to leave that in the past and move forward with their current teams.
Yeah, that makes some sense, right? So I think that at this point, it'll all end up coming out anyway. But it's been like a slow leak, unless you're like really, really into the Boston media. There's just been rumblings about stuff all the time. Like before Tom Brady even, before the season last year, the big thing was Tom Brady sold his house or put his house up for sale, and people didn't know if that meant he was leaving or if he was just moving or whatever the case may be. But it was a sign that things might not be settling well in New England anymore. And we have to keep in mind that Tom Brady is a super competitor, almost very MJ-like. He wants to win at all costs. He wants to go out there and perform the best he can until he can't do it anymore. He's always looking to have the edge that nobody can believe in him, or that he's too old to be doing this. He's always trying to find the next edge to compete. And probably another one of those edges that he wants to do is, be able to have a say in how the team can improve and just scheme stuff and figuring stuff out. And you'd think that the best quarterback really ever would have more say in the locker room after winning 6 Super Bowls and all this, that, and the third, but it doesn't seem like that was really the case. And maybe it's something like, this is my job, let me do my job sort of thing, and, don't overstep. And maybe that's just the Patriots' way of doing things, but at the same time, I'd have to believe that eventually that got a little bit annoying, because at the end of the day, when you're that big, you have a say, no matter what sport it is. You're not telling LeBron that if LeBron feels like he should get Caldwell Pope more involved, right? Even if the consensus is that Caldwell Pope is not that good of a basketball player. But if LeBron wants him more involved in his offense because he feels like that gives them the best chance to win, I'm pretty sure Frank Vogel's going to listen to LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
Because without LeBron, the franchise is toast. And I guess the problem here is, without Brady, the franchise is not necessarily toast. Or at least the championship window right now is very, very bleak to none. But the franchise is not in utter ruin. When LeBron leaves somewhere, their franchises are typically not in good shape. And Cleveland is, 2 examples are from Cleveland alone. And the first year when he left Miami for Cleveland, Miami was not in the best shape either. So when we have to see what exactly is the year without Brady is going to look like, but you got to remember, not only is Tom Brady one of the best players ever, he also had probably the best head coach ever in National Football League, and he's still there. So it's like you took one half away. So maybe this is more of like the year without Jordan, and it's just Pippen, right? But Pippen is not playing on the field. Pippen is coaching. I don't know. That's just how it feels. And the Josh McDaniels stuff and all that was probably just more boiling water across everything else, right? There's probably more things that have not been said, more things that were done, because he just was not treated fairly, and he was not looked at as somebody who that franchise probably gave as much or should have. Like, they didn't treat him right. For a guy who's done so much for them, it just doesn't look like he was treated fairly to the level of what he's done. Like the amount of championships, the amount of pedigree, the amount of winning that he brought that franchise. basically out of obscurity, right? Because the Patriots stunk for the better half of the 90s and slight early 2000s. So when Tom Brady arrives, they really, really start to change the narrative on the Patriots in general. So, I don't know. To me, I just think that Tom Brady was, in fact, tired about a lot of things, and I think he was saying that in his mind, he was not being respected or regarded as somebody who did this and didn't have an equal part in it. I don't think he disrespects Bill Belichick, but at the same time, I think he thinks that people think that he is not as good or did not earn those championships. It was more of he was a system quarterback and things of all that. And now the team may have started to act like, you're not any bigger than the system. And I think at that certain point, Tom was tired of it because he is bigger than the system. He's Tom Brady. And I think that's the bottom line thing here, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we'll have to see what happens moving forward. And like I said, it'd be interesting to see if the season does go on as planned, to see what happens with both teams and their respective franchises.
All right. Well, let's take another break, and then we'll get into some ESPN stuff.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Okay, Brice, so ESPN has made some tough calls recently. They are changing the commentators in the booth. No longer are we getting Booger McFarland and his running mate. They're going to clean house essentially, but they're going to do it within the house, so they're not going to hire outside people to do it. For one, how do you feel about this? Because I know a lot of people, especially the people who are anti-Booger, this was a long time wish for a lot of people, saying the Monday Night Crew was not very good ever since Gruden left and all this, that, and the third. But I don't know. I have a little bit soft spot for Booger because I like him as his personality. I think he tells quality stories and is very informative about the game, but at the same time, maybe the commentary stuff was not real. It wasn't coming to him, and it definitely wasn't as coming to him as fast as ESPN or really the fans of the sport really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously, I think one of the things that we have to look at, COVID-19's affected the situation because that's one of the reasons why they're doing it internally, because they don't have money, because they're not making any money, so then they can't go and get anybody. Remember, earlier this offseason, they wanted to offer Peyton almost $18 million a year or something to be the new guy, the new color. And obviously that didn't work. And now with COVID and everything, they can't really go out and afford to get a big name. So obviously, you're right, as it's been said since Gruden, Monday Night Football hasn't technically been as popular, and people haven't really been as invested in Monday Night Football as they used to be. Obviously, they've gone through a couple of different teams over the last few years. Obviously, the Jason Witten experiment was a failure. And then this year, they did the two-man booth. And honestly, here's the thing about my opinion on two of them. Joe Tessitore is not bad to me, because I feel like as a play-by-play guy, His voice is not bad. It's just, I feel like we're really bothered by the color a lot of the time. And I think Booger is a very 50-50 fan base. You got the people who don't like Booger. You got the people who do like Booger, you know? And it just, honestly, I just feel like it depends on what kind of commentating style you like. What do you like to hear? Obviously, general consensus, if you think about CBS's Tony Romo, is majority of people like him. They think he's one of the best, if not the best color in the game. But, you know, not everybody can be Tony Romo. So to me, it'll be very interesting to see, you know, since they're shaking it up, who would they have in their place? Because I'm assuming you would want to put people there that people at least know of. I don't think this is going to be some randomly two people that have never been on this, you know, at this point in their lives. It's just we don't know where they're going to go with it, you know, and I think that's going to be the most interesting thing here that we're going to be looking at and looking towards with the Monday Night Crew, because they're really hoping they can get somebody, or maybe have some guys who can come from within their organization and become stars potentially doing Monday Night Football, because that is a national primetime game. So you do have millions of people watching this game. And so you definitely need to make sure your commentary team is doing their job. And most people, or at least are not complaining about what is actually going on. I mean, in my opinion, I was fine with Booger. I wasn't like irritated like some people were. Obviously, you know about the Booger jokes out there because of how he sometimes describes things. It's pretty how he describes it and everything. So to me, it'll be interesting to see who they put into that spot, because obviously ESPN has been, you know, like I said, Monday Night Football has not been really as big as it used to, and ESPN does not need another miss with the commentary team. Yeah,
I think there's a few things. In fact, one, Booger is very much a Southerner, and sometimes it doesn't resonate with a larger audience, especially when a lot of people from the West Coast, the Northeast, a lot of football Midwest. Not everything about the South resonates with people, and like you understand. Like I don't think Booger, like he said some things that like weren't the most articulate, of course, or you know, it's like, you know, if red isn't blue, that means blue isn't red. Like we get that, Booger. Like, but I also feel for him because for one, I don't feel like he was ever set up to succeed in this role in the first place. You know, they put him on the cart first year when they had Jason Witten, and we all forget. It's like we immediately forget that Jason Witten was out there, and Jason Witten went to go play for the Cowboys because he just wasn't good. Like, I don't even think they wanted to fire Jason Witten. He just decided to say, this wasn't it for me, and he left. And then, of course, Booger comes in inside the booth. They get him off the cart. And it's just, like, it wasn't like Booger was out there talking every single time, right? This wasn't him, like, all the time talking. So now he has to adjust to being a color guy. And, you know, we've done broadcasting before, right? We know this isn't an easy business. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to do play-by-play in color. Like Joe Buck, even though he doesn't do color, he does play-by-play. Joe Buck wasn't good for a while before he's like, for a while. People still don't like Joe Buck. He's gotten so much better, but it's a hard industry. It's a hard thing to do. When Shaq first started doing NBA on TNT with the Crew, he was not good. He was not good on TV for a while. His personality, you know, is paramount. People like his personality, but the TV thing takes time to get used to and really feel where the show is and how to really do your thing. You really get chemistry too. Exactly. That's another thing. So, sure, if you want to say Booger didn't do a good job and that's the reason why he was fired, that's fine. But let's not pretend that the guy they're going to put in is already going to be absolute natural, because this is just not an easy industry to just jump in and say, okay, get the next former athlete to come in and do color. Like, that's just not, it's hard to do. And especially when, you bring in a guy who's not otherworldly smart about the game. Like, the reason why they bring in so many quarterbacks is because they have to know basically all the ins and outs of the game. All 22, they got to know what the routes are. They have to know, read defenses. They have to be able to see a blitz coming. They have to be able to know the formations. They have to know why teams are running this, that, or the third. Why is this not working? Why is this not happening? It's harder for other positions to deal with that because a lot of other positions are so one-track minded about their job and their responsibility. So Booger was a defensive lineman for majority of his career. And that was it. And he's a Southern guy from Louisiana that ended up going to LSU, and that was that. and I don't know, maybe it's just that I have a soft spot for guys put in that position who I like to see succeed because I've done color commentary. I know how it can get really stressful and how sometimes the words just don't come to you, and it's not something that just changes over a year. Like, oh my gosh, now I'm the guy. And if you really think that Booger was so bad, ESPN did hire him and put him in that position. So who's to say that ESPN is going to put somebody better than Booger in there? Because they're still the same people that hired him. And to be honest, a lot of people weren't too high on Gruden either before he left. So you can't really please everybody in this situation. You can't get Tony Romo because you can't pay for him. You can't steal Al Michaels and all this stuff. You can't do it. You can't get Chris Collinsworth. It's over with. Just, in my opinion, I think they should have just ran it back for one more year, see if things improve, wait out this COVID thing, and then move on. Because I'm pretty sure, I think ESPN or Disney's trying to get the Super Bowl. I can't remember if that was what. Somebody has the Super Bowl rights now, right? It's not NBC anymore, right?
Well, they actually alternate between the three major networks, Fox, CBS, and NBC every year. So I don't know who had the Super Bowl last year? Wasn't it Fox?
Yeah, Fox had it.
So I think CBS has it this year, maybe. I'll have to see, but yeah. Maybe they're trying to actually get it on ESPN one day.
I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me sometimes, but I guess I can only understand the position that ESPN was put in. But we're going to take our final break here, and then we're going to get into a little bit of some reminiscing, good or bad.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, Brice. So I wanted to do this last segment, do a little bit of reminiscing, we're not talking about the Tribe Called Quest, reminiscing, not the song, but we are talking about some of our most fondest sports memories, or even the ones that were more tragic related to the game of football and just what was going on. So I'm going to go ahead and start first because I've just had some thoughts. I missed the game. Even sometimes I miss the bad parts. But I called this year 2011 was the double dookie, the double pooper. It was a bad year for me as I grew up an LSU fan. And this was the year LSU was number 1 ranked in the country. They beat Alabama 9-6 in the greatest defensive performance I've ever seen between two teams going at it each other. Alabama finds itself back in the number 2 spot. I still remember it like it was yesterday. People were upset. People were not happy that Alabama found themselves back in number 2. They beat, was it Matt Stafford? Or was it Murray?
It was Murray because Matt Stafford was in the league by then. So, yeah, I think it was Murray at that time. I think Murray was a freshman that year.
Yeah, they beat Murray in Georgia. Or they beat Georgia who I believe Murray was the quarterback, and LSU ended up going to the national championship with Jordan Jefferson, a man whose name I don't like to mention very often in my life. So, and this was the same time that the Saints were cooking, man. Jimmy Graham, this was a quality Saints, like one of the best offensive performances the Saints have had in the Drew Brees era. Like, it was incredible. They're in the playoffs at this time. Going up against San Francisco, Alex Smith, Vernon Davis, Patrick Willis, the whole likes. So some real good defensive players all around the board, and a quality offense on the other side that really was still going off of the rails, still off the heels of the Super Bowl run, and still had some of those key players around and things like that. So, the first game was the LSU game where Alabama came in and put their foot on LSU's throats and just didn't take it off. Jordan Jefferson had the worst performance I've seen in college football from a quarterback in a big game. He couldn't get past the 50-yard line. The team couldn't move the ball past 50-yard line. And they just lost. They stunk. It was bad. And then ever since that game, LSU never recovered, in my opinion. From that moment on, LSU did not recover until this previous season. Because after that, you did not beat Alabama. That just took it from them. Like, Alabama was the runaway best SEC team ever since that game, really. They still might be, overall. And then the next pursuing weekend, or was it even the next day? No, I think it was the next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
The Saints they get I don't know why the Saints do this. This is like every Saints game I've ever watched in big primetime stuff. They either get a huge play that's supposed to seal the game, and then things just don't work out. Anyway, Jimmy Graham gets a go-ahead touchdown, 40-something yards. He just takes it and runs. It was beautiful. Beautiful ball from Drew Brees. The last drive, defensively, is just some of the worst stuff I've ever seen in my life. It's just prevent D all over the place. Alex Smith's running around, and they do the catch part two with Vernon Davis, where he gets clocked in the end zone but still scores. He starts crying. It's just one of the worst 14-day sequences in Louisiana sports history. 2011. I'll never forget 2011. Personally, it was a lot of pain. Of course, the greatest days of my life. When the Saints won, I just didn't know. I just wish I was older to really, really appreciate that. I still appreciate the Saints winning, but it was it didn't affect my life as much as it does now. And I just wish it could have affected my life at an older age as it did. But you go ahead, sir.
All right. So obviously, you already know what I'm going to talk about. Obviously, the Super Bowl 28-3. I haven't really told a lot of people about how I was that day. So obviously, obviously watching the game, we're up 28-3. You're hyped. You're excited. We're getting parade plans ready.
I was really upset. I was so mad. I was just like, they're really about to do this. Because at this point, I was like, wow, the Falcons are the best team in the NFL. I can't live like this. We're going to not have the Super Bowl over their heads to mock them. It's over. It is over.
Yeah, man. And man, we was ready to storm the city. We were ready to storm the streets. And then when the Patriots made that comeback, man, let me tell you, it was just the come down was so hard. It was like you just dumped an energy drink and you crashed. But this time you crashed into a 16-wheeler. It was bad, man. And then that same night I had to drive back to college. So obviously
so listen,
this is what happened. So when the Patriots tied that thing up to overtime, I was sick. I was done. I decided to get in my car and start driving back, but I still had the radio on just in case. But I was like, we're losing this game. And then when they said on the radio the Patriots win the Super Bowl, let me tell you, boy, I was so depressed. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to text nobody. I was just depressed. I couldn't sleep that night. I literally could not go to sleep till 5 a.m. that night. I was that depressed. Like I just was too depressed to sleep. Like it was rough, man. Like honestly, bro, I couldn't even think about football for a couple of months. Honestly, I just did not look at anything Falcons related. Like, bro, it hurt. It hurt, man. It hurt. And that really affected me. Because even I remember like sometimes like a week or two after when I would even just slightly think about it, bro, it would just bring back this pain. And I was like, I don't even want to. Like, I'm telling you, bro, it just brought back this pain and I just wanted to stop thinking, like, I'm going to stop thinking about this. This is not, oh boy. And then, that's all you go here for the next, obviously years. And still to this day, people talk like, oh, 28-3. And now obviously it's fine. Like, okay, yeah, 28-3. Yeah. But like before, obviously, it was just like, man. Because remember, like that day too, I wasn't the only one. Obviously, you had kids showing up to school late because they were depressed. And listen, it really just destroyed me when that happened. But I guess one of the best moments I guess I ever felt as a Falcon fan. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure if I have one particular moment that just really like stood out to me. If that makes sense. Not
even the Julio 300 game?
Like, I could go with that game because obviously I was hyped that game. Like, because I'm trying to think, like, obviously I had individual performances that I was hyped for. So obviously those were exciting. Obviously, like, especially like when the Falcons first got there when Michael Turner was out there dominating. Obviously, I was hyped when he played. It was actually kind of funny, even though it was just kind of random. It's funny because I started liking the Falcons before the 12 season. I think we had when Michael Vick was sent to jail, and then we had Joey Harrington as our starting quarterback. It's kind of weird that the first season I ever watched was a losing season, but yeah, I became a fan. But I guess you could go with the Julio game. Honestly, anything with Julio would probably be my top 5. Because that's why I think people say Julio is the real savior of Atlanta. Because you get behind the Julio train and Julio just have these great moments.
That's so crazy how you Falcons fans just will never put your arms around Matt Ryan and say, you did a good job, son. Like, never happen.
I put my arms around Matt. Like, I think this argument that, people didn't like Matt because of Mike, it's just like, but for what we did, as much as we loved Mike, he never really did anything that Matt's actually done. He got us the NFC Championship game once. Matt's got us there 3 or 4 times and a Super Bowl appearance. And he's put up big numbers. So, I just feel like, people try to use that argument. It's like, listen, remember, if Mike never went to jail, never had that thing happen, we probably would have never gotten Julio. We don't know where we would be right now. Obviously, we have somebody completely different than Matt Ryan. And things could be very different right now. But, yeah, man, I guess that's why I think when you look at the Julio things, like, yeah, Julio is probably one of the most exciting players we have on our team, if not the most exciting player. Actually, you know what? A game that really stood out to me, I don't know if you remember Henry Douglas. It was a game, I think Ronnie was hurt, I think. I think Julio or Ronnie, I forgot. I wonder if it was just Ronnie was there by himself and he got hurt. And then Henry had this really big game. I forgot, I guess, which team. But I was so happy for him that day because I think he was a rookie that year. And I was just like, I used to be like, oh, we have one of the best like receiving cores in the league. Because you got Henry Douglas, and we got Michael Jenkins, Rodney White. And so when Henry Douglas had that big game, I was just like, yeah, we have the top 4. Everybody could just kiss it, and we're good. But yeah, man. So I guess that's my memories.
All right, man. Well, we're gonna call it a day here. Good memories, bad memories, all the same. We miss football. So this has been it for the GSMC Football Podcast today. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast, and we'll be back same time next week talking about whatever decides to come out. Hopefully, football is back. For Brice is Ethan for the GSMC. See you guys next week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.